He wasn't on the flight list, but when the colonel saw her tattoo, he grounded the best pilot in the unit and gave her the Apache. Welcome to Tales by Orion. Let us uncover what really happened. The biting wind whipped across the expansive, desolate airfield, tugging at the edges of the camouflaged hangars and stirring dust devils across the cracked tarmac. The air thrummed with the distant roar of jet engines, the clatter of heavy machinery, and the hushed, precise commands of men and women who lived and breathed the language of flight. In the heart of this controlled chaos, amidst the towering behemoths of military aviation, Captain Anya Petrova moved with a quiet, almost invisible efficiency. She was a maintenance officer, her olive-drab flight suit smudged with grease and hydraulic fluid, her dark hair perpetually pulled back in a severe, functional braid. At 29, her face was sharp, intelligent, but often shadowed by an unspoken weariness that went bone deep. To most of her male colleagues, a gruff, hardened brotherhood of pilots and mechanics, she was simply Petrova, another competent officer, valuable for her meticulous attention to detail and her unwavering adherence to protocol. They respected her technical proficiency, her ability to troubleshoot complex systems, her relentless dedication to keeping the birds in the air. But they rarely, if ever, saw the fierce, burning ambition in her sapphire blue eyes, or the profound, almost spiritual, connection she felt to the machine she served. They certainly didn't know that Captain Anya Petrova, the unassuming maintenance officer, harbored a secret, a dream so audacious, so utterly unthinkable in the male-dominated world of elite combat aviation, that she rarely dared to even whisper its name to herself. She wanted to fly the Apache. Not just any helicopter, the Apache. The monstrous, agile, lethal beast of the skies. A symphony of destructive power and surgical precision, a machine that demanded not just skill, but an almost primal understanding of its temperamental heart. Her record as a maintenance officer was exemplary. Her knowledge of the Apache's complex systems, its intricate hydraulics, its temperamental avionics, was encyclopedic. She could diagnose a malfunction by the subtle tremor of a rotor, by the faint, almost imperceptible hum of an engine, by the barely audible hiss of a hydraulic leak. She knew these machines not just from their schematics, but from countless hours spent in their guts, feeling their vibrations, listening to their metallic sighs, understanding their unspoken language. This wasn't just technical expertise. It was an innate, almost spiritual connection to the very soul of flight. From a young age, growing up in a cramped, industrial city, surrounded by the monotonous rhythm of factory life, Anya had found solace and profound understanding in the ordered beauty of engineering, in the elegant logic of machines. Her earliest memories were of her grandfather, a quiet, unassuming man who had once been a brilliant, though unsung, aeronautical engineer, whose gnarled hands could coax agonizing beauty from discarded metal scraps, building intricate, impossibly delicate model aircraft. Her grandfather had taught her to listen, not just with her ears, but with her entire being, to feel the vibrations in her chest, to understand the unspoken language of machines, to discern the subtle imperfections that could shatter a perfect flight. The quietest hums often hold the most truth, Anya. Her grandfather had whispered, his voice reedy with age, his fingers tracing the intricate patterns of a turbine blade. And it's the silence between the gears that truly shapes the flight. But the world, Anya had quickly learned, had little use for quiet truths or unseen talents. Her grandfather's illness, a swift, brutal descent into an oblivion of memory loss, had consumed their meager savings and her dreams of attending a prestigious flight academy. The military, with its promise of steady income, of continued connection to the machine she loved, became her means of survival, a job that paid the bills, but slowly, surely, extinguished the vibrant flame of her own piloting aspirations. So, she moved through the camouflaged hangars, a silent guardian of flight, ensuring the Apaches were perfectly maintained, that their systems were flawlessly calibrated, that the pilots heard only the polished perfection of the engine's roar, never the subtle imperfections, the hidden struggles, the quiet mechanical imperfections she herself could detect. She rarely spoke of her ambition, not out of shyness, but from a profound understanding that her voice, in this world, was not meant to be heard. It was her duty to facilitate the flights of others, to remain in the background, a silent conduit for the grand symphony of the skies. Tonight, however, the unspoken rule of her silence was about to be challenged. The arrival of Colonel Thorne, the formidable commanding officer who embodied the very essence of elite combat aviation, had already injected an electric current into the base. He was a man of legendary intensity, of volatile temperament, and an unwavering demand for absolute perfection, a perfection that, Anya knew, was becoming increasingly difficult to achieve under the rigid, bureaucratic military protocols. Colonel Thorne, a man whose meticulously combed silver hair and sharp, unyielding gaze were matched only by his ruthless efficiency and his utter intolerance for anything that deviated from his carefully constructed regulations, patrolled the flight line, his expression one of thinly veiled irritation. He was a man who valued order above all else, a man who believed that perfection could be achieved through strict adherence to rules, through silencing any extraneous noise, any unexpected deviation. He had, in fact, given specific instructions to all personnel earlier that day. Absolute precision. No unnecessary risks. No distractions. The Apache program demands a pristine operational environment. Any deviation will be met with severe consequences. Is that understood? His gaze had lingered on Anya, as if sensing the quiet observer, the potential anomaly in his perfectly controlled world. Anya had simply nodded, her expression unreadable, her mind already anticipating the profound, unexpected ways in which silence, and the unspoken truths it often contained, was about to be profoundly, irrevocably broken. The grand exercise was about to begin, and Anya, the quiet maintenance officer, was about to hear a disharmony no one else could detect, a disharmony that would force her, against all her instincts, to finally shatter her own profound, practiced silence. The atmosphere on the flight line during the final pre-flight checks was thick with tension, a palpable current of operational urgency and simmering frustration. Colonel Thorne, a legendary pilot whose demanding intensity was matched only by his rigid adherence to protocol, paced before the two Apache helicopters designated for the critical night mission. His face was a mask of escalating agitation. He had paused the final crew briefing, his voice, usually crisp and precise, now tinged with a sharp edge of irritation. "No, no, it is not right," the colonel roared, his voice reverberating across the tarmac. "The flight plan, the mission parameters, there is a fundamental disharmony, a subtle miscalculation that poisons the entire operational landscape of the exercise. It is like a meticulously crafted machine, but with a single, jarring gear that ruins the whole." "What is it?" The squadron pilots, a collection of the military's elite, looked at each other, bewildered, confused. They had reviewed the plan countless times, meticulously following every detail, every coordinate. They found no overt error, no obvious flaw. Yet, the colonel's anguish was undeniable, his frustration a raw, palpable force. Major Henderson, the squadron operations officer, a burly man with decades of flight experience but little patience for abstract concerns, strode forward, his face a mask of strained civility. "Colonel," he began, his voice placating, "perhaps it is merely pre-mission jitters? The flight parameters are, as always, meticulously calculated. The intelligence is precise. Perhaps if we run a final check of the encrypted comms." Colonel Thorne whirled on him, his eyes blazing. "Jitters? Comms? Henderson, you speak of such banalities when the very integrity of the mission is being violated. It is not the mechanics of the plan, it is the spirit. There is a flaw, a subtle oversight, a logical inconsistency that is out of place. It is like a ghost in the machine, unseen, yet undeniably present. and it is compromising the operational integrity of the exercise. He slammed his hand against the side of the nearest Apache. I cannot greenlight this. Not like this. It is an affront to common sense, to the very essence of sound tactical planning. The pilots shifted uneasily. The tension was suffocating. Anya, perched discreetly under the wing of one of the Apaches, meticulously performing a final hydraulic pressure check, felt a familiar pang of recognition. A ghost in the machine, a subtle miscalculation that poisoned the operational landscape. She heard it too, not in the way the colonel heard it, perhaps as an abstract violation of tactical integrity, but in the way she heard everything, as a subtle vibration, a nearly imperceptible tremor in the air, a minute disharmony in the complex interplay of human and machine. It was like a single, almost invisible, broken thread in a magnificent tapestry of logic. She had noticed it during the previous mission briefings, a faint, almost subliminal anomaly, a minute instability in the overall operational plan, particularly noticeable during the proposed approach phase. She had traced it, in her mind, to a specific logistical detail, a subtle, unaddressed vulnerability in the supply chain that, under the powerful resonance of a complex combat scenario, would create a subtle, destabilizing cascade of failures. It was a detail so minute, so seemingly insignificant, that no one else had noticed it, certainly not the high-ranking strategists or the meticulous logisticians. But Anya, with her almost preternatural sensitivity to systems, to unseen connections, to the unspoken language of logistical flows, had felt it, almost physically, like a low, unsettling hum in her own chest. She had even, discreetly, after hours, run her own simulations, tracing the potential failure points with her fingertips on a discarded map, a quiet, solitary investigation that had confirmed her initial, intuitive diagnosis. But she said nothing. She was a maintenance officer. Her job was to fix, to maintain, to be silent, not to offer unsolicited tactical diagnoses to a world-renowned combat pilot or a formidable commanding officer. Her voice, in this world, was to remain unheard. She thought of her grandfather's quiet wisdom, of the profound truth in his whispered words. The quietest hums often hold the most truth. But what good was truth if it remained unspoken? "This is impossible, Colonel," Major Henderson exclaimed, his face contorted with frustration. "We have checked everything. There is no logical explanation for this. Perhaps your intuition is simply fatigued." Colonel Thorne let out a roar of exasperation. "My intuition, Henderson, is the finely tuned instrument of a lifetime devoted to combat. It is not fatigued. It is offended. I tell you, there is a flaw, a phantom vulnerability. It is like a discordant whisper in the very soul of the mission. Find it, or this exercise will not proceed." The ultimatum hung heavy in the air. The pilots shifted nervously. Major Henderson looked utterly defeated, his gaze sweeping desperately around the vast airfield, searching for a solution, for anything that might appease the volatile colonel. And his eyes, almost by accident, in a moment of utter desperation, landed on Anya, perched discreetly under the wing of the Apache, meticulously performing her checks, her face fixed on the colonel, a strange, almost knowing, expression on her face, a flicker of something she had always carefully concealed. A flicker of understanding. A flicker of a solution? His usual contempt for the lower ranks, his ingrained dismissal of the unseen, warred with his desperate need. He needed a miracle, and in that moment of profound professional crisis, the meticulous, rigid Colonel Thorne found himself, against every fiber of his being, drawn to the quiet, improbable anomaly that was Anya Petrova. The sheer, unadulterated desperation in Colonel Thorne's eyes was a sight Anya rarely witnessed. The formidable commanding officer, usually a bastion of rigid control, was now a trembling, sweating mess, utterly undone by his own inability to pinpoint the elusive flaw in the mission plan. The air on the flight line was thick with tension, a palpable current of professional terror. The critical night exercise, the culmination of months of meticulous planning and countless man-hours, was hanging by the thinnest of threads. And the cause, Anya knew, was a subtle, almost invisible logistical vulnerability, a silent, discordant note that only the Colonel's hypersensitive intuition and her own profound, intuitive understanding of complex systems could detect. Colonel Thorne's gaze, sweeping frantically across the operational area, landed on Anya, perched discreetly under the wing of the Apache. He saw her quiet, observant stillness, the strange, almost knowing expression in her sapphire-blue eyes as she watched his anguish. A wild, desperate, and utterly irrational thought, born of sheer professional terror, sparked in his mind. He had dismissed her 1,000 times, ignored her, seen her as nothing more than a silent, interchangeable cog in the machinery of the flight line. But now, in this moment of profound crisis, something in her composure, in her almost unnerving stillness, compelled him. He rushed to the intercom, linking him to the maintenance bay, his hand shaking slightly as he pressed the button. Petrova. Captain Anya Petrova. Can you hear me? His voice, usually clipped and precise, was now strained, tinged with an unfamiliar note of desperate plea. Anya, startled by the direct address, the urgency in his voice, quickly adjusted her headset. "Yes, Colonel," she replied, her voice calm, neutral, masking the surprise that coursed through her. "I hear you." Petrova, Thorne continued, his voice dropping to a low, urgent whisper, though it still crackled with his barely contained frustration. "The mission plan, I tell you, there's a flaw, a phantom vulnerability. I feel in my gut. My strategists, my logisticians, they can find nothing. Nothing. But you were looking at me. You have that look in your eyes. Do you know something, Petrova? Do you see something? Can you hear this impossible dissonance?" His questions were a frantic, uncharacteristic volley, a desperate gamble, a concession born of pure desperation. Anya hesitated. Her grandfather's quiet voice echoed in her mind. "The quietest hums often hold the most truth, Anya." But speaking that truth now, to Colonel Thorne, to the world, would be to shatter the carefully constructed silence of her life, to expose herself, her unique, hidden talent, to the harsh glare of scrutiny, of judgment. She thought of her years of being unseen, of being dismissed, of being told to remain quiet. But then, she looked at the Colonel, his face etched with genuine anguish, his commitment to the mission a raw, vulnerable thing. She thought of the Apache, the magnificent beast she longed to fly, held captive by an unseen flaw. She couldn't let that happen. Not if she could help it. "Yes, Colonel," Elara said finally, her voice low, steady, imbued with a quiet, unwavering conviction. "I believe I do. I believe I hear it. And I believe I know its source." Thorne's breath hitched. You do?" he whispered, a tremor of incredulous hope in his voice. "Where, Petrova? Tell me. What is it?" Anya took a deep breath. "It is not a tactical flaw, sir, nor an engineering fault. It is a logistical vulnerability, a subtle, sympathetic dependency in our proposed fuel resupply chain, particularly during the second phase of the mission. If the secondary supply depot is compromised or delayed by unexpected weather, the entire operational trajectory of the mission will be compromised. The primary objective is achievable, sir, but the proposed long-range patrol for the secondary Apache immediately after resupply is not viable under those conditions. It will leave our air support exposed, too far from base, too vulnerable. The entire mission, sir, is slightly out of fuel." The explanation, so precise, so utterly confident, so impossibly detailed for a maintenance officer, landed with a stunning impact. Thorne stared at the intercom, his jaw hanging slightly agape. He had overseen countless logistical briefings, received meticulous operational reports. No one had ever flagged such a subtle, impossible flaw. Yet, the way she spoke, the utter certainty in her voice, resonated with an undeniable truth. "Impossible," Thorne muttered, though the word lacked its usual conviction. That's utterly impossible. We have a team of top logisticians. They would have detected such a thing. Perhaps, sir, Anya replied, her voice unwavering, but some vulnerabilities are too subtle for conventional algorithms. Some truths are only revealed to those who truly listen to the unspoken hum of the system. Thorne looked from the intercom to Major Henderson, who was now staring at him, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. He was desperate. He was out of options. And here, in his grasp, was a thread, however unlikely, however absurd, offered by the most insignificant, most overlooked member of his staff. He knew he was taking an insane gamble. He knew his career, his reputation, perhaps the very future of the Apache program, hung in the balance. But he had no other choice. Petrova, Thorne commanded, his voice raw with a desperate urgency. Come down here, now, and bring whatever obscure knowledge you possess. Major Henderson needs to see this. And if you are wrong, Captain Petrova, if you are wrong, then I assure you, your silence will be the least of your worries. The threat was clear, unequivocal. But Anya heard something else in his voice, something that transcended the threat, something that spoke of a desperate, unwilling respect. It was an invitation, a terrifying, improbable, and utterly irresistible invitation to step out of the shadows, to shatter her silence, to finally, truly be heard. Her heart pounded, a frantic drum, but it was a drum of exhilaration, not fear. She was about to step onto the flight line, not as a ground crew, but as a silent, unlikely savior of a mission, and in doing so, she was about to redefine her own existence. The journey from the maintenance bay to the flight line felt like an odyssey. Each step across the vast, windswept tarmac, each roar of a distant jet engine, was a testament to the immense, terrifying chasm that separated Anya's world from the high-stakes, male-dominated realm of elite combat pilots. She moved with a quiet, determined grace, her hands, accustomed to wrestling with thick cables and intricate equipment, now empty. Her only tools her profound intuition and her unwavering belief in the truth of what she had heard. Colonel Thorne waited for her near the two Apaches, his face a mask of strained civility, his usual composure having completely deserted him. He glanced at her with a mixture of desperate hope and a barely concealed irritation that such a monumental crisis had fallen to the most insignificant member of his staff. Major Henderson, the squadron operations officer, still looked utterly bewildered, his eyes darting between Thorne and Anya. He was locked in a private battle with a phantom logistical flaw, oblivious to the drama unfolding just feet away. The other pilots and ground crew, however, watched her with a mixture of bewildered curiosity and silent speculation. Who was this quiet young woman, emerging from the shadows of the maintenance bay, summoned by their formidable colonel's frantic commands? Was she a new specialist? Another expert flown in at great expense? Thorne, swallowing his pride, managed a terse introduction. Henderson, he began, his voice strained, this is Captain Petrova, from maintenance. She believes she has identified the source of the issue. Major Henderson stared at Anya, his initial skepticism evident. He saw her flight suit, smudged with grease, her practical braid, her unassuming demeanor, and clearly saw nothing more than a maintenance officer, utterly out of her depth in a tactical discussion. And what does the little maintenance officer believe she has found, Colonel? Major Henderson sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. A loose bolt? A leaky hose? The colonel says this is a tactical oversight, a violation of the very soul of the mission, not a mundane engineering flaw. Anya felt a flush of humiliation, but she met his gaze, her own sapphire blue eyes holding a quiet, unwavering conviction. She would not be intimidated, not by his rank, not by his experience, not by his contempt. The mission, the truth, demanded otherwise. Major, Anya said, her voice quiet but firm, carrying effortlessly across the windy tarmac. It is neither a loose bolt nor a leaky hose. It is a fundamental vulnerability in the operational plan. a subtle dependency in our proposed fuel resupply chain, particularly during the second phase of the mission. If the secondary supply depot is compromised or delayed by unexpected weather, the entire operational trajectory of the mission will be compromised. The proposed long-range patrol for the secondary Apache, immediately after resupply, is not viable under those conditions. It will leave our air support exposed, too far from base, too vulnerable. The entire mission, Major, is slightly out of fuel. Her explanation, delivered with such calm precision, such utterly confident authority, landed with the force of a physical blow. The other pilots exchanged astonished glances. Major Henderson stared at her, his initial scorn giving way to a profound, bewildered surprise. "The mission, out of fuel?" he whispered, the absurdity of the concept warring with the chilling accuracy of her description. "Impossible. This plan has been meticulously vetted by top logisticians. Every variable accounted for." "Perhaps, Major," Anya replied, her voice unwavering, "but some vulnerabilities are too subtle for conventional algorithms. Some truths are only revealed to those who truly listen to the unspoken hum of the system. I have felt this discrepancy during every briefing, Major. It is a low, almost subliminal hum, a destabilizing current that subtly undermines the operational integrity of the mission." Thorne, witnessing Major Henderson's stunned reaction, stepped forward, a desperate urgency in his voice. "She did, Henderson. She has been insisting on it. She even ran her own simulations. She feels it." He was trying, clumsy though it was, to advocate for her, to transfer the burden of belief. Colonel Thorne ignored him. His gaze remained fixed on Anya, a fierce, unreadable intensity in his eyes. He slowly walked towards the tactical map displayed on a nearby portable stand, his long, artistic fingers tracing the proposed flight path, then pressing against a seemingly innocuous section near the secondary supply depot. He closed his eyes, listening, feeling. The pilots watched, holding their collective breath. After a long moment, Colonel Thorne straightened up. His face, which had been a mask of anguish for hours, now held a look of profound, almost religious astonishment. "There," he whispered, his voice thick with a dawning, incredulous comprehension. "My God, there is something, a minute vulnerability, a ghost of a flaw, barely perceptible, but undeniably present. It is so subtle, so profound, no algorithm, no sensor could ever detect it. Only the human intuition, only the human feeling." He looked at Anya, truly looked at her, for the first time not as a maintenance officer, not as a subordinate, but as a fellow strategist, a fellow connoisseur of profound, hidden truths. How did you hear this, Captain Petrova?" he asked, his voice filled with a profound, almost humbling awe. Anya met his gaze, her sapphire blue eyes shining with a quiet, triumphant light. "My grandfather taught me, Colonel," she said softly. "He always said, the quietest hums often hold the most truth. And it's the silence between the gears that truly shapes the flight. I merely listened to the silence of the plan, and it told me its secret. The simplicity, the profound wisdom of her words landed with a stunning impact." Colonel Thorne stared at her, his jaw slack, his immense ego, his legendary skepticism, shattered by the undeniable truth of her intuitive genius. He had dismissed her, mocked her, confined her to the shadows. And she had, in turn, offered him the key to unlocking the true viability of his mission. A moment of profound, charged silence descended on the flight line. Then, Colonel Thorne did something entirely unprecedented. He took a single, deliberate step towards Anya, then another, until he stood directly before her. He reached out, his hand, the hand that commanded the most elite combat squadrons in the world, gently touching her shoulder. "Captain Petrova," he said, his voice raw with emotion, "you have not merely found a flaw in my mission. You have found a flaw in me, and in this command. You have, it seems, taught us all how to truly listen. You are a genius." And then he did something even more astonishing. He reached out, his finger tracing the intricate pattern of a small, discreet tattoo on her arm, hidden beneath the sleeve of her flight suit. It was a stylized rendering of a soaring eagle, its wings outstretched, a tiny, almost imperceptible symbol of flight. He had noticed it when she had inadvertently rolled up her sleeve during a previous technical check and dismissed it as mere personal adornment. Now he understood. He looked at her, his eyes blazing with a fierce, almost desperate curiosity. He knew what he had to do. The Apache program was about to change, and Anya Petrova, the shy maintenance officer, was about to take her rightful place not just as a silent hero, but as the undeniable, unacknowledged, and profoundly triumphant pilot of her own destiny. The colonel's declaration, "You are a genius," resonated across the windswept airfield, a profound and unexpected pronouncement that sent shockwaves through the assembled squadron, through the stunned Major Henderson, and most profoundly, through Anya herself. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the camouflaged hangars, the towering Apaches, the stern, rigid lines of the officers' faces. It was not just the colonel's words, but the raw, unvarnished sincerity with which he spoke them, the genuine awe in his voice that broke through her carefully constructed composure. She had been seen, truly seen, recognized not for her menial labor, but for the essence of her being, for the quiet, profound gift she had always kept hidden. Major Henderson's stunned silence, a sound of utter defeat and dawning humility, was a stark counterpoint to the colonel's praise. He, the man who had always valued rigid protocol, efficient logistics, and the suppression of any unconventionality, found his world irrevocably shattered by the very maintenance officer he had dismissed. He stood there, a figure of profound shame and shattered authority, his meticulously combed hair now disheveled, his sharp uniform rumpled, his usual imperious demeanor utterly, irrevocably gone. Colonel Thorne, oblivious to Henderson's quiet breakdown, remained focused solely on Anya, his powerful tactical mind already racing with the implications of her discovery. "This subtle vulnerability, Captain Petrova," he exclaimed, his voice regaining its usual intensity, but now infused with an exhilarating, almost childlike wonder. "This ghost in the system is a profound revelation. It changes everything. We must correct it. Immediately. The mission simply cannot proceed with such a fundamental flaw." He turned to the squadron, his gaze sweeping over their astonished faces. "You see, you hear, the truth. It is revealed by the quietest voice, by the deepest listener, by the intuition that transcends algorithms." He then turned back to Anya, his eyes blazing. "How, Captain? How we fix this? Can it be done? Before tonight's exercise?" Anya, wiping her tears with the back of her grease-smudged hand, took a deep breath. "It is a logistical issue, Colonel," she explained, her voice gaining strength, her analytical mind, despite the emotional turmoil, kicking into gear. "It would require rerouting primary fuel support, repositioning the secondary depot, perhaps a complete redesign of the long-range patrol parameters for the 2nd Apache. It is an extensive change, but it is feasible. It would require immediate, decisive action, and a profound trust in new calculations." She looked at Colonel Thorne, a silent question in her eyes. It would require his cooperation, his authority, his willingness to rewrite the entire mission plan based on her insights. Colonel Thorne, struggling to compose himself, managed a jerky nod. "Whatever she needs, Major," he roared, his voice rough. "Whatever she needs, immediately. The entire logistical and operational staff is at her disposal." His capitulation was absolute. Major Henderson, with a roar of renewed enthusiasm, immediately began issuing commands. Logisticians, pilots, ground crew, all scrambled to respond, their movements imbued with a new sense of urgency, of shared purpose, inspired by the extraordinary drama that had just unfolded. Anya, no longer the silent maintenance officer, now moved with a quiet authority, directing the team with clear, precise instructions, her unique understanding of systems guiding their every move. She pinpointed the exact location of the subtle logistical flaw, oversaw the careful recalculation of fuel loads, the strategic repositioning of supply lines, her senses attuned to the minute adjustments, ensuring the complete eradication of the discordant vulnerability. The work was intense, meticulous, a race against time. But the atmosphere on the flight line, once thick with tension and despair, was now charged with an exhilarating sense of possibility, of collaborative problem-solving, of shared mission. Colonel Thorne himself hovered nearby, offering advice, offering encouragement, occasionally looking at Anya with a profound, almost reverent admiration. He had found not just a solution to his tactical dilemma, but a living embodiment of the elusive truth he had always sought in his command. By late afternoon, the work was complete. The mission plan, subtly redesigned, its discordant vulnerability finally resolved, felt different, almost resonant. Anya, exhausted but exhilarated, stood by the colonel, her eyes closed for a moment, listening intently to the profound, now flawless, hum of the system. She could feel it, the true harmony. The mission was ready. Colonel Thorne, his face radiant with anticipation, turned to his assembled squadron. "Gentlemen," he boomed, his voice resonating across the airfield, "tonight we fly. We fly with a mission plan meticulously refined. A plan that is not just tactically sound, but flawlessly optimized. A plan that is safe. A plan that is, dare I say, perfect." He paused. Then his gaze swept over the entire squadron, fixing on Anya. "In this perfection," he said, his voice filled with a profound, almost emotional conviction, "is thanks to the quiet, brilliant insight of Captain Anya Petrova. She identified the unseen flaw. She corrected the unperceived vulnerability. She saved this mission, and in doing so, she has proven that true genius, true understanding, resides not just in rank or experience, but in the ability to truly, deeply listen to the unseen hum of the system." He then turned to Anya, his eyes blazing. He reached out, his hand grasping hers, and lifted it, high above their heads, in a gesture of profound, undeniable victory. "To Captain Anya Petrova," he roared, his voice echoing through the vast airfield, a powerful, emotional pronouncement that reverberated through the very bones of every person present. "To the genius who taught us how to truly listen, to the mind that found the truth in silence, to the pilot who saved our mission, who will, I assure you, save many more. You have proven your worth, Captain, your true worth. Your place is not just on the ground. Your place is in the cockpit." He then, with a flourish, ripped off his own colonel's pilot wings from his chest and, to the astonishment of the entire squadron, pinned them reverently onto Anya's uniform, right above the eagle tattoo on her arm. "Tonight, Captain," he commanded, his voice thick with emotion, "you fly the Apache. Not as a passenger, not as ground crew, but as a pilot. Your rightful place, your true destiny." The roar of the Apache engines, starting up in unison, was a thunderous counterpoint to the thunderous applause that erupted from the squadron. The cheers, the shouts, the sheer unadulterated awe filled the air. Anya, tears streaming down her face, looked at the colonel, then at the pilot wings on her arm, then at the magnificent Apache, its rotors beginning to spin, a silent promise of flight, of freedom, of a dream finally, irrevocably realized. The stage was set, the skies were waiting, and Anya Petrova, the shy maintenance officer, was about to take her rightful place not just as a silent hero, but as the undeniable, unacknowledged, and profoundly triumphant pilot of her own destiny. The first rays of dawn painted the airfield in hues of gold and rose as Captain Anya Petrova, now a pilot, not just in name but in spirit, strapped herself into the cockpit of the Apache. The massive helicopter, a beast of raw power and intricate engineering, felt different now. It was no longer just a machine she maintained. It was a partner, an extension of her very will, its controls responding to her touch with an almost living precision. The night exercise had been a resounding success. The revised mission plan, meticulously crafted by Anya's insights, had been executed flawlessly, proving her theories, her instincts, her profound understanding of the complex system. The Apache squadron had achieved its objectives with unprecedented efficiency, its pilots returning to base exhilarated, their respect for Anya now bordering on reverence. Colonel Thorne, his face etched with pride and exhaustion, had personally debriefed her, his questions no longer tinged with skepticism, but with a genuine, almost hungry, curiosity to learn from her unique perspective. He had recognized her genius, not just in a moment of crisis, but in the quiet, methodical brilliance of her mind. He had acknowledged her worth, not just as a maintenance officer, but as a pilot, a strategist, a leader whose intuition transcended rank and convention. The sight of his own pilot wings, pinned to her flight suit, was a constant, tangible reminder of the profound shift that had occurred, not just in her life, but in his own understanding of leadership, of talent, of true capability. The news of Anya's extraordinary performance and the colonel's unprecedented act of public acknowledgement rippled through the base, then quickly spread through the wider military command. It was a story that defied convention, that challenged ingrained prejudices, that spoke of raw talent emerging from the most unexpected of places. Anya, the quiet maintenance officer who had once been invisible, was now a legend, her name whispered and hushed, admiring tones in barracks and flight schools across the country. Her ascent was swift, but deserved. Colonel Thorne became her fiercest champion, her mentor, her unwavering advocate within the rigid, often patriarchal, structures of the military. He pushed for her rapid promotion, for her assignment to elite combat pilot training programs, for opportunities that had once been unthinkable for a woman, particularly one whose background was in maintenance, not traditional flight school. He saw in her not just a gifted pilot, but a new kind of leader, a leader whose insights were born of deep understanding, whose authority was earned through quiet integrity and undeniable results. Anya, in turn, never lost her humility, nor her quiet connection to the machines she flew, or to the ground crews who maintained them. She understood, perhaps better than anyone, the intricate dance between human ingenuity and mechanical precision, the profound interdependence of every part of the system. She remained grounded, her heart connected to her roots, to the lessons her grandfather had taught her, to the profound truths she had discovered in the quiet hum of machines, in the silence between the gears. She knew that her success was not just for her, but for all the unseen, the unheard, the underestimated, for all those whose talents lay hidden beneath the surface, waiting for a chance to shine. She became a mentor to young, aspiring pilots, to ambitious maintenance officers, offering guidance, encouragement, and a powerful, living example of what was possible when one dared to break through the barriers of convention, of expectation, of self-doubt. The Apache, the monstrous, agile, lethal beast of the skies, became her domain. She flew it with a precision, a skill, an almost spiritual connection that astonished even her most experienced instructors. She was a natural, her movements in the cockpit fluid, intuitive, her understanding of the machine so profound that it seemed to respond to her very thoughts. She was quite simply born to fly. Her tactical insights, honed by her years of meticulous maintenance and her unique understanding of logistical vulnerabilities, proved invaluable in combat simulations and real-world operations, earning her the grudging respect and eventually the profound admiration of her male counterparts. The eagle tattoo on her arm, once a private symbol of her hidden ambition, became a quiet emblem of her triumph, a testament to the unyielding spirit of flight that burned within her. The military gradually, slowly began to change. Her story, her undeniable success, forced a re-evaluation of long-held prejudices, of outdated assumptions. The emphasis shifted subtly from brute force and traditional metrics to a deeper appreciation for intuition, for unconventional thinking, for the invaluable insights that could emerge from the most unexpected sources, from the quietest voices. And in the heart of that change, Soaring through the skies in the cockpit of her beloved Apache was Captain Anya Petrova, the shy maintenance officer who had dared to dream, who had dared to speak her truth, and who had, against all odds, taken flight. Her story is a testament to the enduring power of a quiet truth, a profound listening, and the unwavering belief that sometimes the most magnificent flights, the most transformative moments, the most profound revelations begin not with a shout, but with a whisper and an invitation to finally, truly, take to the skies and claim your rightful place among the stars.